Okay.
Hello, everyone, and thanks for joining us from the Harrison Township Public Library for this program on Resume Essentials. My name is Mary. I'm a librarian at the Harrison Township Library, and we have joining us Joanne Stadnikar from Schoolcraft College. Thank you very much for coming, and I'll hand it over to you, Joanne. Thank you.
Wonderful. Well, thank you very much, and thanks to everyone at the Harrison Township Library. You guys are great. I'm going to give you some information today, so let me share my screen. And the one thing I want to stress while the screen is loading is I invite everybody who views this, if you would like to work with me afterward, you're welcome to do that. I don't want anybody to feel like they are left hanging after they sit through my talking for the next hour or so. So just to let you know, our phone number, that's our direct dial office phone number, 734-462-4421. And the career services email that you see on the screen, those come straight to me. So career services at schoolcraft.edu. If you want to follow up or make an appointment with me, virtual, of course, would be over the phone or on a Zoom appointment. Just email and say that you got this information from the Harrison Township Library, and I'll be more than happy to work with you. I do want to stress that we don't charge a fee for anything that we do through my office. So, and there are no strings attached, you guys. So I don't want anybody feeling like, oh, you know, what's Schoolcraft up to here? This is a service that we have provided for many years to the community, and I'm happy to help you. So I'm Joanne Stadnikar. I am the Director of Career Services here at Schoolcraft College. I am also a certified professional resume writer and career development facilitator, which is a much fancier thing than it actually is. But what I want to stress to you today is that the information I'm giving you is research-based. I tend to follow what the statistics show is currently working, because there are a lot of wrong ways to make a resume, and there are a lot of right ways to do it. So keep in mind that the information that I'm giving to you today is based off of solid research. It's current. I do a lot of professional development to stay current, but I am not the only, you know, resume person in town. So I want to stress to you that the information I'm giving you is not just my opinion. It's something that's based off of what the research shows is getting people interviews. So here's rule number one. If you get nothing else out of the next hour, it's this. I wish I could tell you that a resume is something you make once and hallelujah, I'm done with it. Unfortunately, that's not the case. And even if you're applying for the same type of job with different companies might be looking for something different. So it's crucial that you consider a resume a living document. You're conducting, in essence, an advertising campaign. And the product whose benefits you're featuring is you. So company A might have one requirement, company B might have other requirements or additional requirements, or might emphasize one skill over something else. So it's important that you try to be as objective as you can, and please try not to take the easy way out by saying, oh, you know, this is good enough. We're going to talk about ways that you can showcase your value. And why this is so important is that because with increasing frequency, and we saw this grow exponentially during COVID, is applicant tracking systems. So what's an applicant tracking system? The applicant tracking system is what I like to call the evil gateway. It's a computer that determines whether or not you're worthy for a human being's eyes. And job seekers hate applicant tracking system computers, but employers love them. And they're not going anywhere. So we need to be able to get you past the computer that's screening you, and also engage a reader once you're on their desk. And we're going to talk about ways to do that. Another thing that should go unsaid is that you can't have mistakes on your resume. Now, this might seem super obvious, but I've reviewed and helped thousands of people over the last 13 years with their resumes. And I will tell you that it still surprises me how many mistakes are still made on resumes. Please don't count on spell check. It's a wonderful tool. It's an assistant, but it's not the be all end all. It doesn't fix everything. So please don't rely on spell check and think you're covered. You really do have to be extra careful because many applicant tracking systems on the market today will actually deduct hits or points off of your applicant or application materials for perceived errors. And we're going to talk about that. We're going to talk a little bit about how a qualifications summary or some kind of a profile benefits most people. We'll also discuss key skills and key words or phrases to include in your resume, similarities and differences. And then I really want to hammer home this last point. If you don't have a business like name-based email address, please create one that you're going to use for job applications. Please don't underestimate the importance of this. It doesn't matter who your email service provider was. You know, there was a rumor 5 or 6 years ago that if you were using Hotmail or God forbid AOL as your email provider, that employers looked at you negatively. That never came to be. I mean, the research verified this information, but what does matter and what does make an impression is what is your email identity. And if you share an email, someone, maybe you're Jane and John Doe at whatever.com. Well, if you're Jane or John, you need to create your own email. So something name-based, that might be first name, last name. It might be first name dot last name. It might be first name underscore last name. It might be initial dot last name. It might be first name, last name with a number, whatever. But it should be individual and it should sound business-like. So save, you know, your I love puppies at whatever.com for your personal email. And when you're applying for a job, use a business-like name-based email address. If you're a college student and you are a current college student, use that .edu email address. And if you attend an Ivy League school like Harvard or Stanford or Columbia or Yale, pay the Alumni Association whatever you have to pay them to use your .edu. But when you graduate from your average university, quickly create another email account that you can use for applying for jobs, because nothing screams I'm a student more than a .edu email address does. So let's talk about what do you do when you put your resume together. So number one, please don't use a template. I don't care if it's a fancy template you paid for and downloaded online or whether it's a Microsoft template. Here's the problem with using a template to make your resume. Templates are really nothing more than tables and text boxes. So number one, they're very inflexible for most people. I mean, there's some manipulation you can do to the information. But the real problem is applicant tracking systems. And if you're using a template, you risk having 50% or more of content that you've put in that resume not being captured by an applicant tracking system computer. And that's because these computers see templates, they see text boxes and tables as graphic elements, and it doesn't tend to capture the information contained within. So you might tell yourself, well, I have a great resume and nobody's calling me, and it's because I'm a man, or it's because I'm a woman, or I'm too old, or I'm too young, or I'm too whatever. No, the fact of the matter is you're not getting past the computer because you used a template. Now, for those of you who don't know how to format a resume, maybe your Microsoft Word skills are weak, I'll help you with that. So if that's the case and you have a resume put together and you don't know how to format a Word document, or even if you do know how to format, you know, maybe you're just basics with Microsoft Word, I'm happy to help you with that. And you're welcome to email me and say, can you help me format this resume? I had somebody who's a former student emailed me this morning and she said, I have been playing with this dumb thing all morning and I can't format it. Will you help me? I'll help you with that, you guys. Just don't send me a Google Doc because I'll be blocked from opening it. And by the way, you guys don't want to apply for a job with a Google Doc either, and we'll talk about that later. The fonts and the bullet points you use on the resume matter, but they matter for different reasons. The font you use matters because of the human eye, and the bullet points that you use matter because of the applicant tracking system computers. So right now, and I expect this to change, but there are only 3 standard bullet points in Microsoft Word that are universally recognized by every applicant tracking system on the market. And these are the only 3 right now that you should use. I expect this to change over time. But right now, this is the stuff that transcends every applicant tracking system. One is the little closed dot like you see on the screen here. The other bullet point that transcends every applicant tracking system is the open circle. So it looks like the dot, only it's just the outline to the circle. And the other one is the closed square. So please don't use the thing that looks like an arrow or a check mark or the flower in Microsoft Word. And you may say, well, these are standard Microsoft bullet points. What's the problem? The problem is applicant tracking systems will sometimes think you've put a picture on the computer, on your resume. And the computer thinks that the information next to that picture is a description of the picture. It doesn't recognize it as content that it might want to capture information from. So stick to those basic bullet points to start. The fonts that you use matter because the human eye has an instant impression of who you are based on the font and the size of font that you use. It's a balancing act, you guys. You don't want your font to be too big or too small. A good rule of thumb for most people is a size 10 or 11 font is certainly not going to be a problem. And when you get to 12 or larger, unless it's a really small font, you're risking coming across as amateurish or aggressive. So you want to be careful with the balance, just like you don't want to make it too small. But if you're using a big font like Arial or Tahoma, you might want to go down to a size 9. So you have to kind of play with it. It's a visual thing. But there are 2 fonts that Fortune 500 HR directors cite as their most favorite. It looks fresh, they look modern, it makes the job seeker appear contemporary, they're easy to read. And the first one is Calibri, which is the font you see on the screen right here. It's average size, it has no fancy embellishments. The spacing is nice, it creates enough spacing between lines without having to create extra spacing. So that's one font that's cited as a favorite. It's a sans serif font, which means it's clean line. There's no little lines that formulate at the edges. A serif font is like the Schoolcraft College logo that you see in the lower right-hand corner. You'll see like a little tail on the edge of the letters. It's more formal. It has a little more gravitas. Somebody with experience or in the field of business or engineering might want to use a serif font. And the most favored serif font, as cited by Fortune 500 HR directors, is Cambria. Now, it doesn't mean those are the only 2 fonts you can use, you guys. So don't feel like, oh, gosh, I like Arial better. Then use Arial, that's fine. But I would tell you to avoid these 2 fonts that are cited as the least favorite by Fortune 500 HR directors. Times New Roman. You guys, there's a reason that Microsoft got rid of Times New Roman as the default. So please don't use Times New Roman because you're considered by HR directors, they cite that you are old-fashioned and out of touch. The other one that is cited as the least favorite is Helvetica, and for the exact same reason. I don't know why Helvetica has gotten such a bad rap because it's actually a very easy to read, clean, streamlined font, but you're considered old-fashioned if you use it, so I would suggest you avoid it. You have to be strategic about where you put information on the resume. You know, the length of your resume is not as important as where you put the information, but for most of you, you're not going to exceed 2 pages. There are going to be exceptions to that rule. My sister is a nurse epidemiologist. She's considered a national expert in the field of infection control, and her resume is 5 pages long. As someone with her credentials and experience would be expected to have. 1 page is just all of her research. Another page is her professional publications. So, and 2/3 of the first page is her education and credentialing. In her line of work, that's expected. But for the average person, 2 pages is more than enough. And I can help you with that if your resume is exceeding 2 pages and you're not in, academia or research or the sciences or something like that. But where you put information is important because the computer doesn't care where you put the information. You're going to get the same number of hits no matter what order you list things. But the human eye cares. And the average recruiter spends 6 seconds or less determining if you're worthy for them to continue reading. So you have to think in terms of what's my strongest selling point to my weakest selling point and put your stuff in that order on the resume. So it really depends on your experience, your education, how recent is your education, you know, what line of work are you in? And again, I'm happy to help you figure that stuff out if need be. Please leave personal pronouns and your personal info off of the resume. Please, 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 please. Where you're going to load up personal information and go wacko with the pronouns is on your cover letter. But in the resume, avoid words like I, me, my, our, we, us, they, them. Your resume needs to read like an objective document. There are a couple of exceptions to that. If you're in the performing arts, you will oftentimes have a bio of some sort that's not meant to read objectively because you've prepared it. And then once again, I just want to stress to you guys, proofread, 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 and then proofread again, and proofread in hard copy. You will statistically catch more mistakes in hard copy than you will if you're reading it off of a screen. And ask somebody else to proofread, and you want somebody who's critical. You don't want somebody who's going to say, oh my gosh, you did such a good job. You want the person who's going to look at this and say, I don't think you're supposed to capitalize that word. Because again, spell check's not going to pick up everything. And spell check will sometimes autocorrect and you haven't, and it shouldn't have. And it's going to be up to you to spot those things when they come up. So please, please, please proofread. Let's talk a little bit about employment objectives. Here's the short answer. Do you need one? Nope, but it's not wrong to include it either. But if you're going to put an objective on your resume, please keep it short and sweet and to the point, or what we like to call a banner headline. So for example, if you are an accounting clerk, you can just put accounting clerk at the top of the page. You don't have to put objective, colon, space, space, seeking a position as an accounting clerk, or worse yet, don't write out something dopey like seeking a position where I can learn and grow and do this and that and the other thing. You are eating into that 6 seconds and you are disengaging a reader. Nobody cares about this fluff stuff. And since the top of the resume is the most important piece on that entire document, don't waste that space with stuff that's not necessary. So again, if you want to define yourself, you know, you're a registered nurse, or you're an accounting clerk, or you're a customer service specialist, or whatever you are, if you feel the need to define yourself, go ahead, but just keep it short and sweet and to the point. For most people, however, some sort of a qualifications profile is a smart idea. And what a qualification profile is it's the general reasons why you can do the job. And you can do this in a short paragraph or a couple of short paragraphs. You don't want your paragraphs to be too long, or you can do it in a bulleted list. It's completely up to you. If you're going to use the paragraph format, you just don't want it to be too long, because statistically, after sentence number 3, you start disengaging the reader. So you want to try to keep it as short and sweet and to the point as you can. So now I want you guys to start thinking about what are the 3 to 6 or 7 strongest reasons why somebody should be interviewing you. What are your strongest reasons why you can do this job? So it might be maybe you're a student in a certain program, or maybe you're a recent grad, or maybe you have a certain number of years of experience, or maybe it's a skill set, or maybe it's a combination of those things. It's okay to say bachelor's degree in accounting plus 3 years of experience, and then you've detailed that information somewhere else on the resume. Anything you put in the summary has to be backed up with facts somewhere else on the resume. And this includes soft skills. You never want to lead off with soft skills, but things like, you know, organization, and my least favorite word on the planet, multitasking, customer service. Those are all subjective. So if you're going to talk about your strong customer service skills, you have to back that up with some specific examples of that service somewhere else on the resume. Typically, you're going to put that in employment. But it's okay to reference the fact that you have a certain degree in the summary, and then you've detailed that information in the education section. So these are areas of general knowledge that qualify you for the job that you are applying for. And this is one area on the resume that you probably are going to make adjustments to when you're applying from job to job. When you're discussing your tech skills, whether they're entry level or you have advanced technical skills, please never, ever, ever overstate your proficiency in that area. Because more and more employers, especially because of COVID, we are seeing employers in many different industries, including manufacturing or restaurants, are giving technical skills to their applicants. So these are jobs that are being done on the ground, but they're using technology more and more. So please don't use a word like proficient to describe your tech skills if you can't walk the talk if they give you a technical asset test. So please be very careful with what you put down, exposure to, knowledge of, experience with, classroom training in, or, just don't use that word proficient if you're not. And if you're not sure if you're proficient, just because you can type something in Word doesn't mean you're proficient in it. So be very careful if you decide to use that word, because if you're given a technical aptitude test and you don't walk the talk that you have on your resume, they don't just question your tech skills, they question everything you've got on the resume. And again, this is happening with greater frequency. So please, please, please do not overstate your tech skills. And when you can, throughout the resume, numbers speak volumes on a resume. It really paints a clear picture, and don't ever inflate those numbers to try to make yourself look better. Be straightforward, you guys. I have seen over the years, and I've worked in this line of work for a long time. I was in banking for 25 years before I came to higher education. I just can't stress to you enough that this is another area. If you start inflating numbers, everything and anything is disproven. Everything that you've told them now comes into question. So there goes your integrity. So please, please, please don't overstate a number. If you're not sure and you're not comfortable lowballing it, then don't put a number on. All right. I'm going to assume that most of you know what keywords are. So keywords are words that are used in your industry. And for some reason, I'm always giving accounting examples, although trust me when I tell you, I have zero accounting skills besides the fact that I can balance my checkbook, but I am not an accountant by any means. But for example, in the world of accounting, common terminology are things like accounts payable, accounts receivable, general ledger, cash posting, taxation, payroll. I mean, these are all words that you see all the time when it comes to the world of accounting. Some of those keywords are also key skills that somebody might possess. So maybe you've been a billing clerk and you do a lot of invoicing, and so accounts payable is right in your wheelhouse. Those are a set of key skills. Both of these things generate hits by applicant tracking system computers. But what key skills do is that they give employers a quick snapshot of what it is that you have to offer. And studies seem to suggest that job seekers who incorporate a set of key skills on their resume, as long as it is on the top half of the first page, generate more interest than people who don't do this. And the theory is, when eye movements of these Fortune 500 HR directors are being tracked for research, there's two things that studies show that these HR directors are looking at first. The things that are bolded, so anything in bold print on the top half of the page, which is why you don't want to bold everything, or it kind of defeats the purpose of bolding. And for people who include these little snippets of key skills on their resumes, The eye seems to go there first. And studies suggest that if a recruiter likes what they see in these little snippets of your areas of expertise on the resume, that not only do employers go back and read your summary with greater interest, but studies show they read farther on the resume than if you did everything else the same, except adding a set of key skills. So a lot of people will write a short summary and then put in a set of key skills. I've seen key skills on resumes, and I can certainly help you pull those out. I do this all the time when somebody sends me a resume to review. It'll vary by industry, but always bear in mind that there are certain words that are key skills that can have multiple words to describe those skills. So accounts payable, as I mentioned a moment ago, could also be invoicing or billing. So read through a job posting, and if you've filled up your resume with accounts payable, in different areas, at least one time switch it out to billing or invoicing. You don't have to, you're not getting more hits if you put, oh, well, I'm going to put billing on there 5 times, that I get 5 hits. Once the computer finds the word it's looking for, it starts searching for something else. So since it does tend to increase readership, include it, but talk the language of your industry. So if you're in nursing or healthcare, talk in clinical talk. If you're in business, use business lingo. If you're in engineering, use that lingo. But pay attention to a job posting, because that's where you're really going to notice how that employer talks, and you want to try to mirror it as much as you can. Okay, let's talk education, since I work at a college. Where you put education on a resume is directly relevant to its importance. So if you are a current student or a recent graduate, or for people like my sister, highly credentialed epidemiologist expert in her field, they want to know what your education and credentialing is before they want to know anything else about you. So in her line of work, even though she graduated from U of M in '72 and graduated from, I think she got her last master's degree in the early '80s, her credentials are what they want to know first. It's beneficial to college students and recent grads to either write after a summary, or in some cases even lead off with an education section to give somebody a snapshot. So number one, the only people who should put high school on a resume are high school students. The only exception to this rule is if you are applying for admission to an undergraduate or graduate university program, and you have to include a resume with that college application, include high school on there because they're looking for it. But if you're applying for a job, the rule of thumb is do not include high school on the resume unless you're in high school. Now you might say, well, I didn't go to college, or I didn't finish college, so I have to put something in the education section. Not necessarily. Nothing screams I didn't go to college more than just listing a high school education. And if you are a college student or you did go to college, it's assumed that you completed high school in one fashion or another. So just, if you want to discuss this with me, I'm happy to do that. Relevant technical school though, so if you went to the Oakland Career and Tech Center, or here in Livonia, we have the Livonia Career and Tech Center, and if you did training at a vocational school, please put it on the resume if it's relevant. But if it's not what you're going into now, it really doesn't help you to put it on the resume. Now, this is another dumb thing that you may say, well, who would do that? But please know the name of the school you attend. I'm kind of surprised at how many people think that the name of the college I work for and that they attend is Schoolcraft Community College. And while we are a community college, our name has never been Schoolcraft Community College. We are Schoolcraft College, and Schoolcraft is one word. If I had a nickel for every student who thought school and craft were 2 different words, I could retire. So please know the name of the school you're attending. And if the school you attended changed its name and you know that it changed its name, please use the name that that school uses now, regardless of what your diploma says. So for example, if you attended, when I was young, Davenport University was the Detroit College of Business. So if I had attended the Detroit College of Business, but I know that their name is now Davenport University, that's the name I would be using. But like the saying goes, what you don't know, you don't know. So if you didn't know the school changed, and if the school went on a business like ITT Tech, yes, you can still put it on the resume. You still attended there, you still received a degree. Please don't abbreviate your degree name, ever. Don't put associate's degree in accounting. Write it out, and this is because of applicant tracking system computers. So know the name of your degree. If you don't know what your degree name is, contact the college or university you attended. If you're a current college student, log into your system and see what your degree name will be. So, Associate of Applied Science in Accounting. Bachelor of Science in Nursing. Please don't put BS, because the computer is going to be looking for Bachelor of Science, if that's applicable to you. And if you are in a certificate program, please, this is huge. You earn a certificate or a diploma from an accredited school. Certifications are issued by governing bodies. So at Schoolcraft, I see quite often with our medical assisting students, they put Schoolcraft College certification in medical assisting. We certified you in absolutely nothing. We gave you a certificate. It's a kind of a diploma. It's a degree. The certification is done after you have done some sort of accrediting body testing. And that's how you become certified in something. So the American Association of Medical Assistants does medical assisting certification. And that should certainly, if you have that certification, it needs to go on the resume. If you are a college student or a recent graduate, oh my gosh, academic awards speak volumes, but it loses its cachet the longer you're out of school. So after 3 to 5 years, nobody cares that your GPA was 3.0 or higher, that you were on the dean's list, or you graduated summa cum laude. Nobody cares. So, but while you're a student or as a recent graduate, that's a very strong selling point. So if you're in an honors program or you belong to an honors society, write that information out. It's huge. But again, if you graduated 10 years ago, nobody cares. It doesn't have the weight that it has, but it's an extremely strong selling point, and it speaks volumes to your skills, your knowledge, and your work ethic. It is the rare individual who has a strong GPA if they don't put the work in to get it. For students in a lot of different college programs, it can be a smart idea to list relevant college coursework, especially if you're in a field like business, where the options of classes that you can take are just massive. So engineering is another one that oftentimes will have some very specific coursework that could benefit you to include on the resume. You can put it in any order you want as long as you pass the class. If you didn't pass the class, please don't put it on the resume, and don't put non-relevant coursework. I don't care that you took a drawing class if you're graduating from the accounting program. But again, this is helpful for new student or current students rather, or new grads. For current students only, extracurricular activities, especially if you hold a leadership position, so maybe you're a member of the business club or the Student Nurses Association or the accounting club or the physics club, those types of things have a lot of pull because it shows engagement, and it's career development type activities that are involved in those programs or those types of activities. If you belong to the dodgeball club, you're probably not going to put it on the resume. But if it adds value and you're a current college student, put it on there. And for students or individuals who are receiving training of some sort, but they don't have experience, or they have very minimal experience in the type of work that they're pursuing now, a section either included under education or right after education with internships, externships, academic projects, practicums that are done in the classroom. It can be really smart to include that information for 2 reasons. Number one, 3 or 4 academic projects that outline your skill set. I'm always recommending to our students that they save the course syllabi from their core classes, because every accredited college and university syllabus has a set of expected competencies that you're expected to learn in the class. And it can refresh your memory with, oh my gosh, yeah, we did that. Oh yeah, I did that. Just please don't copy word for word stuff from a syllabus, because it sounds like you copied it from a syllabus. But talk about those projects that you're doing, or those practicums. In our medical coding program, I'm telling you, how these students do these practicums is beyond me, but you're doing the exact same work. A practicum is something you're doing in the classroom that is exactly the same that you'd be doing in the workspace. You're just doing it in the confines of a classroom. So in an accounting program, a practicum for payroll, college students are processing payroll just like they would in the workplace. They're just doing it in the classroom. So it can be helpful to include that. Don't go crazy with it. You know, for most individuals, 3 to 5 maybe max examples of this is a good idea. But if you had 2 solid ones and that's all you've got, that's fine too. If you do an internship or an externship and you are a current student or a recent grad, please detail what you did in that internship. I like to call internships golden tickets. And if any of you listening to this are college students and you have an opportunity to do an internship, please take advantage of that. It pays off huge dividends upon completion of that, whether it's an official internship or you're doing it unofficially to gain some experience. All right, so what about other types of training that you might do? Most of us, no matter what job we hold, I don't care if you work for Target or you work for General Motors, every employer offers some sort of on-the-job training. Start tracking that information. Here at Schoolcraft, like all publicly funded colleges and universities, we do specialized training that's required by the federal government in a number of different areas. So I document every time I do a new training module for that. I document all of the webinars I participate in, just so that I can keep track. It's not, believe me, I don't put every single thing I do as far as professional development on my resume, but it can be helpful to include that because it shows that you stay current in your field. It can be helpful information for people who don't have a degree. And even if you work somewhere like Starbucks or Home Depot or Target or McDonald's, depending on the franchise owner, they have some of the most widely recognized computerized training programs that they require their associates to complete either before they start work or before they'll let them out on the floor. Home Depot is very famous for this. You can't, it doesn't matter what your job is at the Home Depot, you have to do these product knowledge and specialized training modules in their training rooms at every Home Depot store before they will let you out with the public. Document that stuff. It can be good. It doesn't mean you're going to add everything. It doesn't mean you're going to add anything. But if you're light on content or you need to show, oh yeah, I haven't done that at work, but gosh, I've had that training and that employer's looking for that skill, then document it. You know, who did the training and what was the title of the module that you did, or the webinar or the seminar or whatever that you completed. If you have certifications that are relevant to the type of job you're looking to do now, and those certifications are current, please put them on the resume. If you let a certification lapse, because maybe at your job you didn't need to keep it, I don't want to know that you don't have that certification anymore, because the first question as an employer is, well, why didn't you recertify? So you only want to put current certifications on there, current professional memberships. So if you're a college student and you belong to the, of course, I'm going to blank out, the Michigan Certified Public Accountants Association. And by the way, if any of you are college students, many professional organizations will give you free or very discounted memberships. And this can be a great way to find out about jobs, if nothing else. But if you used to belong to the Michigan Certified Public Accountants Association, why would you put that on the resume? I don't care that you were a past member. Same with any credentialing you have. Some credentialing has to be renewed. And if that's the case, you can't put those credentials after your name if you don't. My husband has a PE designation, professional engineer. I believe he has to recertify every certain number of years for his PE to keep his PE license current. If he lets it go, he can't call himself PE after his name. So if you have those credentials, if you're a nurse, you're an RN. If you're a certified public accountant, put CPA after your name. If you are a health or medical records professional, health information management, and you've got that certification, whoop, how did that do that? Skipped an extra spot. Now, why aren't my things showing up on here? I want to back up. There we go. Sorry, everybody. Let me back up. There we go. Okay, so, just stay current with that information on your resume. And again, if you need help with that, I'm happy to discuss that with you. Let's talk employment history. This is the single biggest place I find that people undersell themselves is in the employment section, and it's such a shame. People are so afraid of being too wordy that they start being so vague that you blend in with everybody else. So if you get nothing else out of the next 5 minutes, it's this. Please detail this information, and we'll talk about that in a second. But first of all, who do you work for? Who's your employer? What's your job title? When did you work there? And when you're formatting dates, always, because of applicant tracking system, I'm sure you guys have seen this when you've done online forms, it's always 2 digits for the month and 4 digits for the year. Always, always, always use the month, or just a YYYY, so if it's March of 2018, it's 03/2018 to whatever, but write those dates out. You can just use the year if you want to, by the way. Months, you don't have to use a month, but please don't write it out, and don't just put 3 for March, put 03, because that's how the computer's looking for it. In years of study, I have yet to ever participate in any study that says that dates for employment should go anywhere but the right-hand side of the page. So please make sure your dates are on the right. I like to justify my margins when I'm putting tabs in for things like dates, because it balances the page nicely, but you just want to make sure things are lined up evenly. And then when you're talking about your responsibilities at work, the stuff that's most important or the biggest feature, let's say you're a school teacher and now you're going into accounting. Well, we're not going to ignore the fact that you teach class, but we may start putting a little more detail about maybe you teach math and you're going to talk about what subjects within mathematics that you teach. Those are the types of details, and I want you to be a valued employee. That's what's most important. People have a tendency to be so afraid, as I mentioned a moment ago, of being too wordy, that they're so brief that you start blending with everyone else. So if you work in an office, for example, you answer phones, you type documents, you prepare reports, you schedule appointments. Well, congratulations. Everybody who works in an office does that. What will make you stand out, and I promise this is what will make you stand out, are providing some details about that. Now, you still want to be as succinct as you can, but you might use 2 sentences to describe something in a bullet point. So if you write reports, what type of reports? What are they used for? Are they statistical reports? Are they financial reports? Are they demographic reports? What type of reports are they? Who's using them? Do you just hit a button on your computer and it pulls the report, or do you have to review information to prepare those reports? Who are those reports going to? That's the type of stuff you want to detail. If you process payroll, for how many people? 5 or 500? What do you use to process payroll? If you provide customer service, what the heck does that mean? So if you work in a store, one would assume, or a restaurant, one would assume you provide customer service, but what does that mean? How do you provide that service? Do you use open communication? Do you have a consultative approach? Do you do verbal feedback for clarity? Are you good at diffusing situations? You have an angry customer. Try to give details. I promise it makes a difference, and it's where you're going to stand out. Whenever you can cite a result, I did this resulting in whatever, that's what you want to do. So don't just tell me you reduced turnover or you saved the company money. How did you do that? I did this, which resulted in whatever. And if you can attach a number to it, all the better. But if you can't, you can't. You know, I worked at a bank many years ago, a huge bank where, you know, it was an old fashioned, like out of the movies bank where it had all marble floors and big columns, and the big shots were upstairs, and we never saw them, those of us on the main floor of the bank. And one day we all noticed that one of the vice presidents kept watching us. And we used to have a customer at the bank when I lived in Houston who, oh my God, this man, he would just suck the energy out of the entire bank. You knew the minute that man walked in the door. I've never, you guys, I'm 63 years old. I've never met anybody this unpleasant in my entire life. He never had a happy day, ever. And everybody dreaded on waiting on him. And one of my coworkers, I would open up accounts. This was early in my career, and I had a little desk. There were like 10 of us at these desks on the side of the lobby. And one of my coworkers, when this guy would come in the bank, she'd say, "Hey, Mr. So-and-so, come on over. How you doing today?" And she was always wonderful with him. I mean, the rest of us would be like, "Oh, thank God I didn't have to wait on him." But we noticed that one of the vice presidents kept watching when this man came in the bank. And one day, the vice president came downstairs. Now, again, these guys never came downstairs when I worked at the bank. And he came down and he walked up to my coworker's desk and he leaned forward and he said, "I want to talk to you about Mr. So-and-so." And we all thought, oh my gosh, what did that guy say about her? Because she was always nice to him. And I mean, always, you guys. Like, I'm a reasonably nice person, but trust me, it was hard for me to be nice to that man. But he came up to her and he leaned forward on her desk and he said, "I've been watching you when Mr. So-and-so comes into the bank. And I don't know how you stay so calm and so friendly when that jerk comes in here. But whatever you're doing, I want you to teach it to everybody else." She could put that on a resume, that she was commended by the vice president of the bank for her ability to be calm and friendly with the bank's most difficult customers. So you don't have to win Employee of the Month to put it on the resume. And please don't go nuts with this kind of stuff, you guys. And the farther back you go, the less important it becomes. That goes to employment. The farther back you go on your resume, the less important that employment becomes. So, you know, the stuff that's most relevant and most recent is the stuff that's going to carry the most amount of weight. The stuff you did, 20 years ago doesn't matter. How far back you go on the resume is completely up to you. The average person doesn't need to go back more than 10, 15 years. But there are people like my husband who's had 2 employers in 40 years. We have both of those employers on his resume. Because I don't want it to look like he's only had one employer. So you have to weigh it out. And please don't be sweating gaps in your work history unless your entire life is work a short time gap, work a short time gap, work a short time gap. Then you do have a problem. And we can discuss ways to deal with that and address it with an employer. But if you have unrelated employment, I don't need, if let's say you work at the Home Depot and you're a lot associate at the Home Depot, or you work in the garden center and now you're finally graduating with that nursing degree. I don't need 10 bullet points about what you're doing at the Home Depot. A couple of bullet points is probably sufficient, but I don't want you to ignore the fact that you work at the Home Depot. I want you to be seen as you are valued, and I don't care what job you do. If you're going in and you're doing your job and you are adding to that employer's bottom line, you are adding value. So every job is important. Every job. I don't care if you sweep the floor or if you're the president of the company. Every job is important. I get asked a lot about activities and awards and where do you put them? And boy, it's important for me to showcase my awards. But here's the problem. This stuff usually goes on the bottom of the resume where no one's going to see it. And this type of information rarely generates you hits with applicant tracking systems. But for some people, adding community service or your volunteer work or awards that you've won can add value. But always remember, if it's an educational award, it has more impact if you put that award in education. Again, assuming that you are a current student or recent grad. If it's an employment award, it will have more impact if you put it in the employment section. But here's the thing about these activities. They've got to be current or really recent. I don't care that in 2014 you did a Habitat for Humanity build. If you put that down on the resume and you've done nothing since, the first thing I think as an employer is, well, gosh, I wonder why you don't do anything for Habitat for Humanity anymore. And be very careful if you're one of those people like my dear colleague who retired a few years ago. I've never known anyone who does as much community service work as this woman did, and probably still does. She's retired from Schoolcraft now. But here's the problem if you're super active, is that it can start looking like you have no time for the employer because you're so busy with all of these outside activities. So you have to weigh it carefully whether or not it adds value. And I would definitely argue that it adds value if maybe you have limited experience and something you do in a volunteer capacity is relevant to the type of job you're trying to get now. But do I need to tell anybody out there, if you do any type of volunteer work or community service with a hot button organization, which means politics or religion, you have to be really careful about what you're putting on a resume. I mean, today's political climate, have you guys ever seen anything like this before? I don't want you to be counted out for a job because you support a particular candidate or political party, no matter what work you're doing, unless you're applying for a job where that would add value. So you've got to be really careful about the information that you put down on the resume. When it comes to religion, what you need to be careful about is, are you going to be seen as preachy if it's not relevant? So if you teach some kind of religious education and you're applying for a job as an accountant, unless it's with a nonprofit, it probably doesn't help to include that organization. And sometimes it's just better just to put the name of the organization down. If you do service through your house of worship, maybe you work at St. Leo's Soup Kitchen once a month through your house of worship, you could just put the volunteer work you do at the St. Leo's Soup Kitchen instead. Okay, let's talk cover letters very briefly, but I want you to start thinking about this now, because please don't underestimate how important it is to have a thoughtful, personal cover letter with every resume submission, whether you're doing an online application or whether you're emailing a resume to somebody, unless you're told not to do a cover letter. And if you're doing an online application and you are not given space to upload a cover letter separately, make it the first page of your resume. And at the bottom of the cover letter, before you get to page 2 with your resume, insert a page break at the bottom of the cover letter. Otherwise, the applicant tracking system will mush all of your information together. But whatever you do, please, please, please don't write some stupid generic letter that screams, I don't care about you as an employer. Take your time with these letters, personalize them. You know, nothing screams, I don't care about you more than a to whom it may concern. Please find attached a resume for the accounting clerk position. I look forward to hearing from you. You couldn't have put less thought into it if you tried. And it's not fun to write a cover letter, but once you've done a couple of them, you'll start to get a feel for it. You want to make sure you format your cover letter and frankly, anything that goes with your resume to match your resume, the same header, the same font, the same margins. All of your application documents should have a cohesive feel to them if you have prepared them. Obviously, if you're submitting transcripts, it's going to have the feel for the educational institution that you attended, it's not going to be formatted to match you. But a cover letter, a reference sheet, all of that stuff. And please make sure you address that letter to a specific person. Please don't put to whom it may concern or dear sir / madam. If you don't know the recruiter's name, number one, it's okay to call a company and say, this is going to sound really stupid, but I'm applying for that accounting clerk position and I don't know to whom I should address the letter. Can you help me? You can also put just dear human resources director, dear recruiter, dear hiring manager. Or You can type it up memo style, and this is gaining in popularity because it is becoming, in the age of applicant tracking systems, harder and harder to discover who the hiring manager is. So it's okay to format it just like a memo. So again, format the page so it matches your resume, then put the date, to Human Resources Director, XYZ company from you, and then regarding whatever the job position is that you're applying for. And then you can launch right into a letter without any type of a salutation at the top of the letter. So that can be a nice feature for somebody if you can't find out who the hiring manager is. In these letters, if you don't feel confident, and I talk to a lot of job seekers who don't feel confident, you know, they're hopeful, they're excited, or they're even like, I really need a job. If nothing else, I want you to sound sincere and enthusiastic. And make sure if you're going to sound confident, I don't want you to sound arrogant. And there's a fine line between those two things. So one way you can sound confident is by avoiding passive phrasing or a lot of prepositional phrases, and making sure that when you're writing that letter, you sound like a nice person. This cover letter should sound like you. That letter should sound like you. It shouldn't sound like me. It shouldn't sound like some dopey example you found online. And we'll talk about where you can find examples that aren't the greatest, but they're good. And they're good. They give you a good framework for building it. And I'll talk about that in a second. This also has to be error-free. And always include a cover letter, unless you're told distinctly not to. So if you're doing an online application, again, if you're not given a separate space to upload a cover letter, don't think, woohoo, I'm off the hook. Make it the first page of your resume, insert a page break at the bottom of that cover letter, and then your resume starts on the next page. Always, with an online application, use Microsoft Word. Always. Even if you're given multiple options for uploading a document, always use Word, because you will get more hits in Word than any other file format, hands down. When you're emailing a resume to somebody, unless you are directed to do something differently, write your cover letter in the body of your email and then attach your resume as a PDF to preserve the formatting. Never send someone a Google Doc, ever, unless you're applying for a job with Google. That is the only company you should use a Google Doc when you're applying. But even with Google and you're applying online, you can upload a Word document and you'll get the most amount of hits. If you need inspiration for writing a cover letter, if you're an executive, email me at careerservices@schoolcraft.edu. I have executive cover letter samples I'd be happy to send to you. But for the average job seeker, I have yet to find a better, more comprehensive set of examples than on monster.com. Just Google it, monster.com cover letters. And then just start reading through the letters. Don't feel like you have to find something that matches your industry. What you're looking for is a letter you like. Because if you like it, that means on some level it's resonating with you and it sounds like you. But please don't copy them word for word. Borrow phrases, but notice what they're talking about and how the cover letter is formatted. What are they talking about in each paragraph? And then do the same thing in your own words as much as possible. A cover letter shouldn't be 3 sentences. It should be a couple of paragraphs long. It shouldn't copy information verbatim from your resume, but it should allude to the resume and it should make them want to take a look at it. Let's talk references for a quick second, because there is nothing worse than finding out that a job's going to close out at the end of the business day. And oh my gosh, I have to include references. So get a reference sheet together now, and please don't write at the bottom of your resume, references available upon request. What a total space waster. And obviously, if they want references, you have to give it to them. But please don't put the references on the resume. Create a separate sheet. Again, format it to match your resume. If you're only given one space to upload a document, at the bottom of the resume, put in a page break and then insert create the next page being your reference page. Always ask someone before you include them as a reference, always, no exception to that rule. Don't be hurt if somebody tells you no, move on to someone else, but you want to find 3 to 6 people who can attest to your skills, your knowledge, and or your work ethic. This can be current or former coworkers, your supervisors at work. If you're a college student or a recent grad, your professors, other students, people you volunteer with. But again, it's people who can attest to your skills, your knowledge, and or your work ethic. That's who you want to include on your reference list. But before you list anyone as a reference, you are going to Google them. And you're going to Google yourselves as well. I can't emphasize this enough. Employers, 87% of employers, according to the National Association of Colleges and Employers, Google their candidates. And here's what studies show they're looking for. Is your overall online presence positive or negative? That's all they're looking for. So you have to think, and you've got to think about what you're putting on social media. And please don't sit there and tell me that, oh, don't worry, my social media is private. If you're on social media, it's not private, period. I've shown this to students over and over and over again, and I Google students all the time because I handle student employment on campus here at the college. And if I have a concern about a student, the first thing I do is I Google them. And employers are doing the same thing, and they're Googling your references, and you are who you hang with. So you only want to list people whose overall online presence is positive. Just please keep that in mind. All right, let's wrap it up by saying again, if you got nothing else out of the last hour or so, it's this. This resume is a living document, and please don't take the easy way out, please. Look at your resume as objectively as you can every single time before you send it out. And ask yourself, do I need to adjust anything? If you do, adjust it. Now, if you're going to a job fair, because I expect on-the-ground activities to resume in some regard this fall, please. Obviously, you can't customize something that you're going to a job fair with. But if you're sending it to someone or you're applying for a job, you need to do that. And please, please, please convey your value with details. This is the one thing that really does make you stand out. But again, I want you to be as concise as you need to be. So this is an overview of who we are. We have an online job board here at Schoolcraft. And here's what I want to emphasize to each and every one of you who are nice enough to sit here for the last hour and listen to me. You are welcome to follow up with me. You can shoot me an email at careerservices@schoolcraft.edu. Say you saw this presentation from the wonderful folks at the Harrison Township Library. You can call my office at 734-462-4421 to schedule an appointment. Again, say I saw the presentation through the Harrison Township Library. I would love to schedule an appointment. It's free. You guys, I don't share your information. You're not going to get spammed with come to Schoolcraft stuff. We're here to help you. That's the purpose of my office. I talk with community members every day of the week. I am happy to help you. And when you put together a resume and you update it after you've watched this intensive talk for the last hour, update your resume the best you can. I'm happy to work with you even just over email. But email me a Word document or a PDF. A Word document I would prefer because it's the least amount of editing on my end. But if you need help, I want to help you. If you're looking for a job, please sign up to use our job board, College Central. We have a section for community members who see the exact same content that our alumni do. It is a wonderful job board. I get hundreds of jobs in every single month in every industry you can think of at every professional level. If you're looking for a job, please use this resource. You're welcome to take advantage of it. And again, I don't share your information from that job board. If you need some help choosing a career or you want to do some career research, we have a program accessible through our website called Career Coach, schoolcraft.edu/careers. Click on Launch Career. I think it says Explore Career Coach now. I think they changed it. It's updated real time with statistical information that's programmed to Southeast Michigan. There's only one statistic that's a national attainment level, and that's education that's reported nationally to the Labor Department. But otherwise, if you need to do some career research or you want to do a career assessment test, you're welcome to use that. Again, we don't share your information. I am the administrator for that site. I don't give your information to anybody else. I do these types of presentations year round. We've been doing them virtually. I've got more resume essentials coming up over the summer, but we also do career presentations on other topics as well. If you go to our webpage, schoolcraft.edu/career services and click on job search solutions, you'll see the list of workshops there. I also post them on our College Central online job board calendar of events. In a normal year, we do job fairs, but because of COVID, I decided not to go virtual after talking with my colleagues at the other community colleges, but we do offer campus recruiting events, and everything we do is open to the public. Unless you want to work as a student employee on campus here at Schoolcraft, then you got to be a student. But otherwise, everything we do is open to the public. No fees of any type are charged to anyone for anything we do in this office. So I want to emphasize that to you today. So I thank you for your time. You guys, I really do appreciate that you spent time listening to me for the last hour. If you would like to reach me or you have questions or you need some help, please don't hesitate to reach out. And I want to thank Mary and everybody at the Harrison Township Library because everybody's been so nice. I enjoy working with the library patrons and staff, and I appreciate the opportunity to talk to you.
Thank you very much. This was so informative. Wow, I took pages of notes, so we really appreciate it.
And I have a resume booklet too that has examples and it mirrors this presentation. If anybody would like me to email them a copy of the book, or if you're looking for some resume samples, I may have them to send to you as well.
Excellent.
So thank you, everyone. I appreciate your time. And thank you so much. You've been a very gracious host, so I appreciate it. Thanks. Bye-bye.